All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to do a few other advanced formulas, as well as some cool little shortcuts and tips to make your Excel sheets a little bit more flashy and useful. Okay, so in our last video, we went over averages. I'm just going to go ahead and go over averages again. Here I have a group data worksheet, and I want to go ahead and calculate the average change for our students' marks, pre and post tests. So again, I'm going to use that David effect. I remember it's post minus pre, and close parentheses, divided by pre. And then we have, look, it's like a 100% increase. That's great. And I'm going to go ahead and look at each student's increase just by duplicating that formula. And I can actually duplicate all the way down to the bottom. I actually previously went ahead and I calculated the averages of each one. So I found out that I had about a 14% increase in our stuff. So that's great. It's because some of them increased, some of them decreased, but in general I had a positive increase. Okay. This is a great tool. Again, using averages is something we use as school counselors all the time. But let's just say we want to see when maybe things aren't going so much our way. There's a thing called conditional formatting, a really cool thing that basically kind of red flags when we're having problems. Now obviously you can kind of go through each one, but let's just say you want to red flag whenever you have a problem when someone's decreasing. So I'm going to go to a thing called conditional formatting. And over here, this creates basically rules that highlight certain values. So I'm going to go ahead and go to classic. There's all kinds of different rules that you can create. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rule where, let's see, a cell value is, I'll put less than. Let's say it's less than 0. So anything that's negative, and it's going to be red. I'll go ahead and hit OK. And what happens is that when you do that, it will go ahead and highlight those times when you have students who are below. So you can kind of be like, oh, Dennis, Jim, and Mindy need some help. Okay. The same thing you do for like stuff like this. Maybe marks. Might want to highlight when a student has maybe a 1. So I'll go to my conditional formatting. I'll create a rule. And you can play with this a lot. There's all kinds of different things you can do. You can do percentiles. You can do certain values. Percentiles are pretty good, but I'll put R less than 1.1. That way it'll be one below. And then you'll notice once I hit that rule, it will highlight a bunch of things when we have kids who are doing poorly. Okay. That's a cool thing if you're looking system-wide, a lot of different data. Helps you pop things out for just your own help. Okay, so that's conditional formatting. You can play with that. Please feel free. It's on your worksheet. It's what I call auto red flagging. It helps you red flag students who stand out. Again, you can do it by percentile. You can do it by greater, less than, blank cell, fill cell. When it comes to specific data, I like to keep it to numbers because numbers are pretty easy to do. Next, I'm going to show you guys one of my favorite formulas, which is a counting formula. Now, counting formulas I actually use all the time, especially when it comes to counting certain number of students. Let's say I have a bunch of students that I've contacted, but I want to see how many 8th grade students I have served. I have served individually in my student contact log. So here's a student contact log, and I'm going to go ahead and figure out how many 8th graders I have. Now I could count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or I could use a formula that I know, a counting formula. Again, whenever you're doing a formula, you want to go ahead and hit equals, so the computer knows that you have a formula. You'll go ahead and put count if. It's conditional. Right here you see it says range criteria. Here's the range, the grades. Oops, I want to go ahead and delete that. Make sure you're doing it correctly. If you do it incorrectly, it might or it may not work. There's my range, and my criteria is 8th grade. So I had seen 10 8th graders. Let's see about 7th graders. Same formula. Count, remember you want to do equals. Count if, in parentheses, select that range, comma, criteria, 7. And there's an error there. Let's see what it was. Oh, it looks like I did too many parentheses, so it should be good. I have 4. So you can see how this could be helpful if you're trying to count hundreds of students. You want to select a few others. You can also count by using text. Let me show you kind of a way of doing this. Over here on my student contact log is again something that you're going to have that you can go ahead and use. I have frequency. I have some students I see a lot. I have a new student who I've seen a few times. I'm going to go ahead and find how many times I've seen her. So I have T Hatch. She's pretty popular. She's in 8th grade. I want to see how many times she's seen me. So what I'm going to do is that same count formula. But this time, what I want to do is I'm going to go to my student scene, select my criteria by students, again select it very carefully. Again, you can see that it tried to do a little something different. So make sure that you just have a student scene, comma, and my criteria is going to be in quotation marks, very important, T Hatch. And then close it, and then you see I've seen her twice. So I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. I can go ahead and do a quick timestamp and date stamp, depending on what system you're using. PC or Mac is a little bit different. On a Mac, it's Command. The date stamp is Command minus. If you're on a PC, it's Command semicolon or Control semicolon. You can actually see that on your handout. It will also be available on the website. You can also do things like timestamps. Again, those are really cool for when you're doing student contact logs. All right. And last but not least, data ordering and sorting. You notice over here, this data set actually has little sorters. The way you actually get the data to sort is by clicking on the Data tab, and you ask it to use a filter. Before, I don't have a filter, and I can't really do much with the data. But once I have a filter available, turn it on. Go ahead and actually have to select what I want to get filtered. So I'll have this stuff, filter it, and now I can actually select it by, if I want to select it by ascending by student, it will just ascend it by student. It won't change the order at all. Or, in some case, maybe I might want to select it by certain students. So I only want to see Mr. Law, Stone, and Savage. So it'll show me those 3 students right there. So I can go ahead and do a quick inventory of those students that I've seen. That can be very helpful. You can then go ahead and resort it by time, and there you are. Really cool way to just quickly check data. I've used it a few times when a principal called me or a stakeholder called me. How many times have you seen this student? And I can be like, okay, great. I'm going to go to my student contact log and just really quickly go, I've seen them this many times. If you don't have ways of documenting very well on your SIS, this is a great way of personally documenting it for yourself so you can make sure you've done it. I hope this video is helpful. Again, I went over counting numbers, date, timestamps. Locking data sets is something that you might also want to do, but go ahead and talk to me about it. It's a little bit more advanced. We'll need to more advanced formulas, but here's how you lock a data set. When you lock a data set, it helps you when you're doing some of these dragging things, especially if you're doing very complicated formulas across multiple spreadsheets.